Hi friends, welcome back to Connerty Meadows Farm. I have some herbs and some other things that I need to harvest today, so I thought I would bring you along for the ride. The first one we're going to start with here is some chamomile. We use this in teas. I also use it in infusions in my soaps and salves, but primarily it is for tea. I also like to save the seeds. The process for drying these for any of the above is the exact same. These are domestic chamomile. I've grown these ones from seed. Most of these ones are Roman chamomile, and there might actually be some German chamomile in here. As you can see, there's a lot of pollinators hanging out all over these. The easiest way to harvest these is just grab the flower and pluck it off. We've got an area here where there's quite a few of them. So you just put them between your fingers like this, and then you just pull them forward, and you end up with flowers in your hand. You can just harvest them individually. If this patch was very full, I would definitely be using a lot of the finger scraping technique. It's a good start, and I have left some of these older ones here because these are going to go to seed and they'll reseed this bed. Next herb that we are going to harvest today is my lemongrass. It has gone completely crazy in the herb spiral garden here. Lemongrass does not overwinter here, so it's always a good idea to give it a really good haircut before the weather changes, which is what I'm going to do today. And then I will dig up the lemongrass and I will put it in a pot, and it'll come inside for the winter so I can have it again next year. Now, lemongrass can be fairly sharp, so it can cut you, kind of those lovely little paper cut kind of things. But you gotta get way down under it here. And then I just like to grab a chunk of it, as much as my scissors can handle, and give it a wee haircut. So let me bring you in a little closer. There's our cut down bunch. Now there is still some leaves in here that I've left, but these will actually all have a little bit more time to sprout some more leaves that they need to survive for the winter. And then this clump, I will more easily now be able to dig this up and bring it inside into a pot. Right next to my lemongrass, my cilantro has gone to seed. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to harvest those seeds so that I can save them and I can plant them next year. The cilantro looks like this. It's all very much dried out, and at this point it's really easy to get the seeds. You just have to run your fingers over the top and the little balls will just fall right into the bucket. So you can see here, see those little balls? Those are the little seeds. And then I just hold the bucket underneath as I run my fingers over them. And then they just kind of fall right in. You can see down there in the bucket. These do self-seed. There's no way that you're gonna get all of the seeds without some of them falling to the ground. So wherever you plant the cilantro, if you do let it go to seed, expect it to pop up on its own next year. The next thing we've got to harvest is some rosemary. Rosemary does not live in our winters here, so I'm just going to give this rosemary a really harsh haircut for the simple fact that I know it won't survive, so I might as well harvest as much of it as I can. So I'm just going down the bottom in here. And I'm giving it a very, very strong haircut. We just hang the rosemary up to dry, and that's the easiest I find, instead of trying to dry it any other way. This beauty's really showing off her colors today. Thought I'd share. Next thing we're going to get on the list is calendula. So today we are going to harvest the calendula petals as well as calendula seeds. I donate the seeds and I save them for planting. Calendula, if you just let them seed where they are, they'll just drop their seeds, and once you have them planted, so long as you let some dry and drop, you'll never have to plant them again. I'm gonna start by harvesting the seeds because they're a little less sticky, and as soon as I get into harvesting the flowers, my hands are gonna get really sticky. So I'm gonna start with the seeds. In here you'll see we have calendula at a whole bunch of different stages. So this one's just kind of open, this one's dying off, these ones the petals have died off and it's going into the seed form, and this here is a mature seed. These green guys here, they're not quite ready yet for gathering for seeds. This one is almost ready. It's not as dark brown as I'd like to see. When I am grabbing them for seeds, this is what I want to see. This one right here. All dark, all brown. When you pull it off, it just crumbles up into your hands. That is what you want for seed saving. Friend in the garden. So that is an entire container full in very short order. I've gathered enough seeds now. Let's move on to collecting the calendula flower petals. When I am collecting the flower petals, I will collect from ones that are fully open, like this one is. But as to not waste the flower petals, this one here is already started to dry up. I'm gonna grab those petals too, because I'm drying all of these anyway, and that one's already started for me. So is that one, so is that one. Calendula is very sticky when you're harvesting it. So just know that going in, your hands are going to get really, really sticky. So I will harvest just the top. If you snap, it'll come off, and I'll put that in. So this part is the easy part. When we get into the house, separating all of the petals from the flowers is a little bit more of a job. So I'll actually come up here and I will grab these petals and I will put them down in my bin. So all of these ones here, they've already partially dried for me and I don't want to waste them. Gucci girl. There's the harvest that I'm going to take today, and don't worry, I don't take all of the flowers. I always leave some. After all, we do have bees, but even if we didn't have bees, I would be leaving these for the native pollinators. Today's harvest was chamomile, calendula, cilantro seeds, lemongrass, and rosemary. And let's not forget the calendula seeds. This one's a really easy store. These are already dry, so all I need to do is put the lid on them, and I will write on this what they are, And we're good to go. The calendula that we collected, calendula is very easy to save. We get a cookie sheet. We take the hail and dump it out onto the cookie sheet. And then I just leave this outside to dry. Sometimes if it's gonna be a windy day or a rainy day and I don't wanna leave it outside, I'm afraid of it blowing away, I'll actually just pop it into my oven. No heat, no light, no anything, just to let it dry naturally. And it usually is about 2 or 3 days and they'll be fully dry. If you're looking to save calendula for the seeds, so these guys, I usually like to save the biggest and the fattest ones. And I'll go ahead and you'll wait till these are dry, and then all you have to do is rub up against them and the seeds will come up. If you actually look inside the pail here, you can see all those little bits in there. Believe it or not, those little teeny tiny bits are actually seeds. They're very small. Here in the basket beside me, I have the rosemary. And just like if you watched my previous video on harvesting herbs, we are going to go ahead and tie these into bundles. Got our rosemary into a clump. We've got the same string that I used to tie everything up. Now rosemary does have a lot of little fur here on the end, so normally I don't bother weaving through the same way I do with some of the other plants. I'm just gonna go ahead and tie it, and then it's ready for hanging. Some of these bits that are left over, I'll put on a cookie sheet and let them dry. Next on the list of things that we harvested was the lemongrass, and we did harvest most of this lemongrass already in little bundles. So when I put them in, most of them maintained their little bundles. So this becomes a very easy thing. Again, we're tying it in bunches. One thing I've found about the lemongrass is that for some reason my cats just love it. So I do have to make sure that I hang it very high so they can't get into it. The last one that we're going to work on today is calendula. And calendula is a very sticky one to work with. So this is what the flower looked like when we picked it. And then we get to be a little bit destructive. On another cookie sheet, I really like using cookie sheets because it's just really easy to clean. We're gonna hold the flower in the middle and we're just gonna pluck all of the petals off of it. Remember, we picked some of those ones that the petals were already starting to die off. So a lot of those petals are actually sticking, so we got to get them off too. But it's an easy, just take them off. All those extra little petals. Sometimes I can hold the stem and you can just pull them that way. However you choose to do it. I do know some people will put these in the dehydrator and they'll leave the green bit on. I have found in the past when I've done that, they tend to mold. So for me, the easiest thing to do is to just get rid of that green part. Now you could pluck this all off and then put this part in the dehydrator instead of on a cookie sheet. Again, I will just leave this outside and let it sit outside and let it dry naturally. Sometimes, if the weather's not going to be the greatest, again, just like the chamomile, I'll just stick it in the oven, not with the heat on, not with the light on, just for safekeeping, and it will dry out in there. And what you're left with is this little bit here. And I actually just keep all of these and I feed them to the goats. If you don't have goats, you can just compost them. Throw them in your compost bin. I try, so that was a little bit of a green piece there. I try to make sure I get all those little green pieces out. A lot of the stuff sticking to the green bits are the ones that we put in that we yanked off as we were picking. You can see like this one has lots of the other petals from other flowers attached to it. So we just pull those off. One of the other reasons why I like putting them on a cookie sheet outside is oftentimes there'll still be lots of little spiders and bugs on them, and I don't want to hurt them. So putting it outside on a cookie sheet gives them an opportunity to scuttle off somewhere else and then still be beneficial, just not in my house. The odd green piece here and there that might get in, it's not going to hurt it any. The green just isn't as desirable as the petals are. I have all my calendula separated. Move it about on there. Spread it out a little bit. I probably should have grabbed a bigger cookie sheet, but I thought I didn't have as much. So all these tops that are left here now, I just put them in a container and I will pop them over the fence to the goats. All right, so this I'm just gonna leave out on the deck here outside. If I missed any bugs, they can run out, and I'll let nature dry for me. We're working inside today because it's a little rainy outside. We brought our calendula in and we've just had it in the stove because of the rain. It's all dried and we're just gonna go ahead and put it into our jar that is labeled with the date. And we store in a cool, dark place. Next to go into the jar is our chamomile. Now you could use these same chamomile and save them for seeds. This little bit on the top here, that is actually your seed pod. And all these little teeny tiny pieces on here are all seeds. So whenever I want seeds, I simply come to my jar and I grab what I want. There we go, another one done. The last one I have on the list here is rose petals. This is from my beautiful yellow rose. And these are also all just dried. Again, I just pop them in here. And it'll be stored alongside the chamomile and calendula. Our lemongrass takes a few extra days to dry out. So now our lemongrass is dry and it's ready to go. We still have it in the bundles. We're just gonna pull our little string off. We need a bowl, a sharp pair of scissors, the jar you're putting it in, which I already have labeled with the name and the date, and our funnel. Lemongrass, once it's all dry, it's very sharp again. I discussed that before, but with the lemongrass, I just cut it up into tiny little chunks. Just take your time. The stuff on the bottom is thicker. You can cut it into whatever size you want to use. I am not super picky on the size of it. If you're finding what you're doing is too much, just grab yourself maybe a smaller chunk. When I get to the point that I start seeing that it's going to get harder and harder to hold it, I'll actually switch sides and I'll go to the little itty bitty ends and I'll just start cutting them in. However you choose to do it, there's no right or wrong. All you're trying to do is cut them up to get them into the bowl. I'll go quickly through, look for some of the bigger ones, cut them down. All right, so just for time, it's a little windier out here than I'd like for it to be, but it's all right. And then it's just a simple matter of putting it into your jar. And that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna finish cutting all of these up. Lemongrass, all filled. The next herb that we're going to do is rosemary. Got my jar already ready. So here's our rosemary clumps. And if you've watched my previous video, we are going to treat the rosemary pretty much the same way as we did with the rest of those herbs. Rosemary will flake off really easily once it's dried. So let's take the string off. And we're just gonna slide down and get the rosemary to fall right off into the bucket. Crumple it up. Run your fingers down. These ones won't, you can't really slide like the same way you can with some of the other herbs. You just kind of rub it between your fingers and get it to come off. Once you get up a little bit higher, then it's like the same as the other herbs. Just grab and pull. It'll slide right off. But on the thicker parts of the stem, it doesn't always work that way. You gotta play with it a little bit. You can see here some of the rosemary left behind, so I just go back through and pluck off the bits. Now rosemary, I don't generally spend a lot of time crushing up. We just kind of leave it in the form that it's in. I'm gonna get its jar ready. And I'm gonna go ahead and finish these up. Well, my rosemary is in my jar, and that's that. We hope that you found this video helpful. Don't forget, if you have, to like it, subscribe to our channel, and share our link with all your friends. We'll see you next time on the farm.